So unfortunately, I really do think it's going to largely fall upon the shoulders of the tourists to just be aware of when they've stepped off the theme park track and are in an area that isn't typically used to tourists. What is good, everyone? Welcome to the channel. My name is Paul. I make videos about Japanese society, life, and culture from the viewpoint of a long-term foreign resident. I've been in Japan almost 20 years now, and I'm standing in the parking lot of the infamous, or recently infamous, Lawson's convenience store. Behind me right there would be normally Mount Fuji, but you can't see it at the moment. There is the Lawson's itself. And across the street, the screen that was erected by the officials of Fuji Kawaguchiko town to prevent people from taking photos from over there. Now, this is not the topic I'm talking about today. I'm not actually going to be talking about this story, but if you're not familiar with this, I'm going to summarize it briefly. And basically, the issue came with a lot of tourists wanting to come and take what became an iconic photo of Mount Fuji with the Lawsons in the forefront. And it became viral on social media. And everyone wanted to get this photo. And so swarms of people came. Fuji's not even out today. The screen is across the way, and you can still see there's a lot of people walking around, milling about, trying to get the photo. And it was causing a lot of nuisance for local people. So people were running into the roadway in front of cars, despite the signs that say don't do that. People were standing and blocking traffic. People were jumping barriers into the dentist's office across the way. And allegedly, some people actually climbed up onto the roof to get the iconic photo shot or the best angle possible. So city officials decided they had to take action, and they erected that barrier because crossing guards and signs weren't enough. So while today's video is not about this exact incident per se, it does play into what I want to talk about in terms of a theme today, which is the interplay between Japanese local people, Japanese local governments, and tourist planners, the influx of many, many foreign tourists to Japan, and social media. That's the theme of today's video. Now, unfortunately, I don't have enough time to stay here in Kawaguchiko and film the entire video here. I'm going to have to do a hand blackout cut, and you'll see me next on the street in Yokohama somewhere, but that's what we're talking about today. Let's go. All right, I'm going to start this off 1 year ago. I'm sitting having breakfast in a cafe in Kyoto, and next to me are two couples sitting at the table. They've never met each other. They basically ended up sharing this table, and one couple had been there for a full day already, and the other couple had just arrived that day. And the couple who had that 1 day of experience were telling the new couple what they should be doing in their first day in Kyoto. And it was basically the absolute most popular sites, basically paint by numbers. You go here and you go here and you go here. This is the Kyoto experience. It was all the old suspects: Kiyomizu-dera Temple, Fushimi Inari Taisha, and the Arashiyama Bamboo Forest. And there's nothing wrong with those places at all. It's just that it was a weekend. They were going to be incredibly crowded. And I'm sitting there thinking about the temples that I was going to see later that day, knowing that I was probably going to be one of the only people there. And I was right. So what's going on? Why do all the tourists end up in the same places in Kyoto, causing this alleged over-tourism problem? To be honest, I think a big portion of that is social media. People see the beautiful photographs on social media. They want to be a part of that place and see it themselves and get that photograph for themselves. And so they head off to Kiyomizu-dera. They head off to the Arashiyama Bamboo Forest. And that's where all the crowds are, because everyone's heading there too. Now, honestly speaking, Kyoto does not have an over-tourism problem. They don't. They just have over-tourism in these very specific places. One of the solutions that I've kind of banded around in my head is that Kyoto government should maybe hire some really famous influencers to go and take photos and videos of themselves in these other places in Kyoto. It'd be all about trying to spread that tourism out and get the tourists going to a bunch of other places. Now, I've seen comment sections that have people saying things like, oh, it's a conspiracy, the Japanese don't want the foreigners everywhere, so they're trying to actually keep them in these places. There's been no concentrated campaign to keep foreigners in any particular areas. I'm not even sure how they would do that. Not to mention, they would be really in trouble with their constituents because they're basically stabbing the rest of Kyoto people in the back by not spreading out the economic benefit that tourists bring. And one thing I need to mention that's important for later is the people in those areas are totally used to the tourists. Kyoto has long been a tourist mecca for foreigners and Japanese alike. I mean, the Japanese have been taking pilgrimages to Kyoto for centuries to see historical places, the shrines, the temples, and the cultural touchstones that are so important to Japan and Japanese culture. So it's only in recent times really that these very specific areas have become super crowded. And I would say that's even true with foreign tourists. I feel like foreign tourists spread out more back in the days when you had a printed guidebook that you were going by and you weren't influenced by social media to try to find these exact places of these photos that you've seen on Instagram, on Snapchat, on Facebook, etc. And of course you realize a lot of those photos have been taken at very particular times of the day or very particular days, or maybe have even used AI to edit out all the people, because generally speaking, if you go there now at any given point, unless you're up really, really early or really, really late, it's going to be very crowded. So I think there are things that the Kyoto government could do to help spread out the tourism. Hiring influencers is one possibility. Another possibility is to have very special campaigns, like full color photo campaigns in English and other languages that are kind of featuring certain neighborhoods, trying to impress on people to go there. And while that might only change the flow of tourists a little bit at first, if any of those tourist photos start to go viral and those places become the new darlings on social media, then that will help spread out the tourists throughout Kyoto. If you have any particular ideas, I mean, I'm always trying to think of things that, what if they did this, or what if they changed that? If you have any particular ideas, of course, share them in the comments below. But let's get back to Kawaguchiko. Kawaguchiko and the Lawson's photo is actually kind of a different issue or a different problem. And to get into that in more depth, I need to start actually at a different tourist attraction in the area, the Chureito Pagoda, which has become just one of those ubiquitous photos, and it means Japan. If you see that pagoda and Mount Fuji, everyone thinks Japan. It's been used in all kinds of advertisements, guidebooks. I've seen it listed on job sites, like get a job in Japan, and that's the photo that they have up. It's probably the most famous photo of anywhere in Japan at the moment. And the thing is, I used to live in that city, and I know for a fact that pagoda isn't very old. It was built in the 70s, meaning it's 40-something years old now. I also know that they built it specifically to try to lure tourists to come to the city. And it didn't work. Basically, no one showed up. It's a beautiful view. It's always been that beautiful view. But when I lived in the city, my friends and I used to have parties up there because there was no one around. And it was a beautiful place to have a few drinks and look at the cherry blossoms, etc. But then along came social media. Social media made that place famous, basically turned it into what the city planners back in the 70s hoped it would be. And it's not like the Lawsons at all because it was planned. So suddenly having lots of tourists showing up there and having crowds of people, snapping photos, eating, walking around, it doesn't cause anyone any nuisance because the area was prepared for that. That's the issue with the Lawson's convenience store. The city of Kawaguchiko, again, going back to comments on the internet, which I know are always inflammatory and a little bit out there, but I heard people saying, well, they wanted to have tourists, but now they're not going to have any tourists now that they put the screen up by the Lawsons. They've shot themselves in the foot. The thing is, Kawaguchiko is a town built for tourism. It's a town that has everything. It has boat rides, ropeways up the mountain, rental bicycles, museums. There are all kinds of restaurants and souvenir shops everywhere. It is a town built on tourism in many respects. But no one expected a Lawson's convenience store to become the famous shot that everyone wanted to get. And so it's in a part of the city that isn't really set up to have huge masses of people milling about. It's on a really busy public road. Across from the Lawsons is just an ordinary dentist's office. And you can't really fault the Fuji Kawaguchiko town hall people, the planners and the government officials, for not anticipating that. In fact, every, and I do mean every, Japanese person I've talked to about this has just wondered, like, why do foreigners want a picture of a Lawson's anyways? They don't understand it. And if you think about it, a convenience store to Japanese is just a completely ordinary, everyday thing. It's kind of like if people from Asia and Europe fell in love with Walmart and then insisted that every photo of the Grand Canyon have a Walmart in front of it. It's kind of the same thing. Now, obviously, konbini are amazing compared to pretty much everywhere else in the world. So I get it. I get why people have come to see convenience stores as another symbol of Japan in addition to Mount Fuji. But you can't really fault the Japanese for not having caught on to that, because it's just an everyday, usual life thing. But along came social media, and it turned that Lawson's into a place with a capital P. And no one knew what to do, and locals were really put out. Basically, it became hard to drive there. It became hard to go into that Lawson's parking lot. The dentist office was greatly inconvenienced. And honestly speaking, I don't really know of any great solutions for that. I'm not sure that this black screen is the greatest solution they could have come up with, but there wasn't a lot of options. As you can see from my intro, there's not a lot of space there. The city tried barriers. They tried signs. They tried crossing guards, and none of it worked. What else could they do? I mean, one of the suggestions I saw that was kind of cool sounding was build a viewing platform, maybe in that Lawson's parking lot. That could work, but that would require the cooperation of the Lawsons. So I'm not sure that would happen. If perhaps you have any interesting ideas, put them in the comments below. I do read all the comments, although since the channel has kind of jumped a bit in the number of subscribers I have, it takes me a little longer than usual, but I do eventually get to every comment. But to be honest, I feel like this is a situation where the solution to the problem really falls upon the tourists themselves. I've had this image bouncing around in my head for a while now, and that is the question, has Japan become a theme park? And if you think about all of the super popular places where all of the tourists go, those places in Kyoto that I already mentioned, you also have Asakusa and Shibuya Crossing and Golden Gai, places like that in Tokyo where you find lots of foreign tourists. And think about it, those places, when you go there, you're surrounded by other tourists. You're in a place where all of the locals are completely used to having all kinds of tourists around. And so it kind of takes on a theme park. You're there to see those particular attractions, and you're surrounded by other people who are there for the exact same reason. And as a result, it's kind of a theme parkification. So unfortunately, I really do think it's going to largely fall upon the shoulders of the tourists to just be aware of when they've stepped off the theme park track and are in an area that isn't typically used to tourists. I also think it's going to take some patience and forbearance by the Japanese locals, just understanding that, okay, this spot is really popular now, and we're just gonna have to deal a little bit with crowds and maybe some trash and noise and more inconvenience. And city officials are just going to have to do whatever they can to the best of their knowledge and ability to mitigate the situation, whatever it is. There's not always going to be a neat solution for these problems. Who knows what the next viral place will be, and a new group of Japanese locals will have to cope with increased traffic of people. But I have to say though that those of you who are watching this video are probably already the type of person who is completely respectful and has no reason to give worry to local Japanese people, especially if you watch this far into the video, you're probably already the type of person that's going off the beaten track and trying to find beautiful places on your own and interacting with locals in a normal, everyday human fashion, not like it is a theme park. So I always appreciate my viewers, and I thank you very much for watching this video and for supporting my channel every way you can. If you haven't hit the like button for this video, if you got value out of it, please do so. Subscribe if you're not subscribed, and by all means join my Patreon, comment in the comment section below, and check out my podcast, The Journal of Japan Journeys. I will link all these things in the first message below. And again, thank you so much for watching this particular video. Let us know what you think about the tourist issues in Japan and what Japan maybe could do to solve them. And I will catch you next week. Peace.